crystal tumbler hit the mahogany desk with a sharp crack that made my spine straighten involuntarily. 3 years of marriage, and I still flinched at the sound of Sebastian's displeasure. Not from fear of physical harm, he'd never raised a hand to me, but from the weight of his contempt, heavy as lead in the air between us. "You're dismissed," he said, without looking up from the contract he was reviewing, his Italian accent turning the words into something sharp and final. As if I were staff. As if I weren't his wife. I remained standing in the doorway of his home office, the divorce papers clutched against my chest like a shield. The late September rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of our penthouse, each drop a percussion mark in the silence that had defined our marriage. 3 years of being invisible in my own home. 3 years of sleeping in separate wings of this marble mausoleum. 3 years of being paraded at his side during business dinners, a perfectly dressed accessory who knew when to smile and when to stay silent. I was done being silent. "I need you to sign these," I said, my voice steadier than the hands holding the papers. Sebastian's pen paused mid-signature. The pause lasted perhaps 3 seconds, but I felt every fraction of those seconds as he slowly, deliberately, set the pen down, and finally, looked at me. His eyes were the color of aged whiskey, amber and gold with flecks that caught the low light from his desk lamp. They swept over me with the same disinterested assessment he might give a piece of furniture that needed replacing. Dark hair fell across his forehead, slightly longer than he usually kept it, giving him a disheveled appearance that somehow only made him more devastatingly handsome. The scar that bisected his left eyebrow, a souvenir from some violent encounter before we met, gave his face a dangerous edge that had attracted me once, before I learned that danger could be cold as well as hot. "What are those?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew and simply couldn't be bothered to care. "Divorce papers." I took 3 steps into the office, my heels clicking against the hardwood with more confidence than I felt. "I've had them drawn up. All you need to do is sign." Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps, or annoyance at having his evening interrupted. Certainly not regret. Sebastian Cross didn't do regret. He was the heir to one of the city's most powerful crime families, a man who'd built his empire on calculated decisions and ruthless efficiency. Emotion was weakness in his world, and he'd never shown me an ounce of weakness. "We have an arrangement," he said flatly, returning his attention to his contract as if I'd merely asked him to review the dinner menu. "An arrangement that's fulfilled its purpose," I countered. "Your grandfather wanted you married to solidify your position. I needed protection from my father's debts and the men he'd sold me to. We both got what we needed 3 years ago. Now I want out." "No." The single word dropped like a stone into still water, sending ripples of shock through me. I'd expected many reactions, indifference, perhaps relief that he'd be rid of his unwanted wife, but not this flat refusal. "You can't just say no," I said, hating the tremor that crept into my voice. "We have grounds, irreconcilable differences, a marriage that exists on paper only. Any judge in this city answers to me," Sebastian interrupted, finally looking up again with those amber eyes that saw everything and revealed nothing. "You seem to have forgotten who you married, Stella." As if I could forget. As if every day of the past 3 years hadn't been a reminder that I'd traded one form of captivity for another. My father's gambling debts had been astronomical, and the men he'd borrowed from weren't the forgiving type. They'd made it clear that I was collateral, and they'd been coming to collect when Sebastian's grandfather had offered a solution. Marriage to his grandson, in exchange for clearing the debt and providing protection. I'd been naive enough to hope for something more than a business transaction. Sebastian had been honest enough not to pretend. "I haven't forgotten," I said quietly. "But this marriage is destroying me, Sebastian. You don't want me. You've made that abundantly clear every day for 3 years. Why not just let me go?" He rose from his chair, and I was reminded viscerally of the physical presence he commanded. 6'3" of lean muscle wrapped in a perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, circling the desk to lean against it, arms crossed over his chest. "You don't understand how this works," he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous register that made even his most loyal men nervous. "Divorce in our world isn't like signing papers and walking away. It's weakness. It says I can't control my own household. It says I made a mistake. Do you know what happens to men in my position who show weakness?" "They get eaten alive," I whispered, remembering the fragments of conversation I'd overheard over the years. The carefully coded discussions about rivals who'd fallen from power, about families who'd lost their standing, about the brutal efficiency with which Sebastian's world dealt with vulnerability. Exactly. He studied me with something that might have been curiosity if he were capable of such a mundane emotion. "Why now, Stella? You've been the perfect Mafia wife for 3 years. Quiet, obedient, decorative. What changed?" "Everything," I wanted to scream. "I've changed. I've spent 3 years watching and listening and learning this world you inhabit. I've transformed myself from a terrified girl running from her father's mistakes into someone who understands power and leverage and survival. I've made myself useful in ways you've never bothered to notice, because you've never bothered to look at me at all." But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I set the divorce papers on his desk with deliberate care. "I've met someone," I lied, the words bitter on my tongue but necessary. Men like Sebastian only understood threats to their possessions. And maybe, just maybe, the suggestion that another man wanted what he'd discarded would finally make him let me go. His expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room dropped several degrees. When he spoke, his voice was silk over steel. "His name. That's not his name." Each word was enunciated with terrifying precision. "The man who thinks he can touch what belongs to me." "I don't belong to you," I said, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. "You've made sure I understand that every day of our marriage. Your bedroom door stays locked. You flinch when I accidentally touch you at public events. You introduce me as my wife in the same tone you'd use for my accountant. So no, Sebastian, I don't belong to you. I never have." For just a moment, so brief I might have imagined it, something raw flickered in those amber eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold calculation I'd come to recognize as his default expression. "You're right," he said quietly, and hope bloomed sharp and painful in my chest. "You've never belonged to me, Stella. You belong to your father's debt, to my grandfather's final wish, to the alliance your presence represented." He pushed off the desk, closing the distance between us until I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody that I'd grown to associate with loneliness. "But you're wrong about not belonging to me now." His hand came up and I froze, but he merely tucked a strand of my blonde hair behind my ear with surprising gentleness. The touch burned. "You belong to me because I haven't decided to let you go," he continued. "And I won't sign those papers, Stella. Not now. Not when—" The sharp buzz of his phone interrupted him. He glanced at it, and I watched his face transform from controlled indifference to something colder, harder, more dangerous. "Get out," he said, already moving back to his desk. "Sebastian, get out." He grabbed the phone, his attention already elsewhere. "And Stella, if I find out this man you've met has touched you, I'll bury him so deep his own mother won't find the body." I fled the office, my heart pounding, the divorce papers left unsigned on his desk. Behind me, I heard him speaking in rapid Italian, his voice sharp with an anger I'd rarely heard directed at anyone. Something was wrong. Something beyond our disintegrating marriage. I should have gone back to my wing of the penthouse. Should have locked myself in my room and mourned this failed attempt at freedom. But 3 years of observing Sebastian's world had taught me that information was currency, and something in his reaction to that phone call screamed danger. So instead, I moved silently down the hallway to the secondary office, where Sebastian's head of security, Marco Vitale, usually worked in the evenings. The door was ajar, and I could hear voices, Marco's familiar rumble and another man's voice I didn't recognize. "Confirmed?" Marco was saying. "You're certain it was Donovan?" "Positive," the unfamiliar voice replied. "He met with the Castellanos 3 times last week. Wire transfers match the timeline. Someone's been feeding them information for at least 6 months." My breath caught. The Castellanos were Sebastian's primary rivals, a family that had been trying to move in on cross-territory for years. And Donovan, Michael Donovan, was Sebastian's second in command, his most trusted advisor. The man who'd been at every family dinner, every business meeting, every strategic discussion I'd witnessed. If Michael Donovan had betrayed Sebastian, the entire organization was compromised. "Does the boss know?" Marco asked. "He's in his office now. That's why I called him." I retreated before they could discover me eavesdropping, my mind racing. This was it. This was the leverage I needed. Sebastian would never willingly grant me a divorce, but if I had something he wanted, information he needed, maybe we could negotiate. The next morning, I woke to find a message from Sebastian's assistant requesting my presence in his office at 9 a.m. sharp. Not asking, requesting. The subtle difference between a summons from my husband versus an order from the head of the Cross family. I dressed carefully in a cream silk blouse and tailored black pants, pulling my blonde hair back into a sleek ponytail that made me look more professional than decorative. If I was going to negotiate with Sebastian, I needed to look like someone worth negotiating with. He was on the phone when I entered, speaking in clipped Italian to someone who was apparently disappointing him. He gestured for me to sit without breaking conversation, and I took the opportunity to study him in the harsh morning light streaming through the windows. He looked tired. Dark shadows smudged beneath his eyes, and there was a tension in his shoulders I'd rarely seen. The perfectly knotted tie was slightly askew, and his usually immaculate hair looked like he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. This was Sebastian stressed, Sebastian worried, Sebastian facing a problem he couldn't solve with money or threats. He ended the call with a sharp command and set the phone down with barely controlled violence. "I need you to do something for me," he said without preamble. I raised an eyebrow. "Good morning to you too." His jaw tightened. "This isn't a social visit, Stella. I have a problem, and you're going to help me solve it." "Am I?" I kept my voice neutral, channeling every ounce of composure I'd developed over 3 years of playing Mafia wife. "And why would I do that? Because I'm your husband. A husband who refuses to grant me a divorce." We stared at each other across his desk. 2 people locked in a marriage neither of us wanted, both too stubborn to look away first. Finally, Sebastian leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting to something calculating. "What do you want, Stella?" "You know what I want. In exchange for what?" Here it was, my gamble, my one chance to leverage myself out of this gilded cage. "I know about Donovan," I said quietly. "I know he's been meeting with the Castellanos. I know you have a traitor in your organization, and I know you're trying to figure out how deep the betrayal goes." His face could have been carved from marble. "You've been spying on me. I've been living in your house for 3 years, Sebastian. I'd have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to pick up on what's happening around me." "And you think this gives you leverage?" His voice was dangerous now, the voice that preceded violence in this world. "You think you can blackmail me with information you obtained by eavesdropping?" "I think," I said carefully, "that I can help you, and in exchange, you give me what I want." You have no idea. I know that Donovan isn't working alone, I interrupted. There has to be at least one other person feeding the Castellanos information. Someone with access to your movements, your meetings, your deals. And I know that you can't trust anyone in your inner circle right now because any of them could be the second traitor. His eyes narrowed. And you think you can identify this person? I think, I said slowly, that I've spent 3 years being invisible in your world. People talk around me like I'm furniture. They forget I'm in the room because you've trained them to see me as nothing more than your decorative wife. I leaned forward, holding his gaze. That invisibility is an asset, Sebastian. I can go places and hear things that your men can't. I can be your eyes and ears without anyone suspecting. Absolutely not. He stood, pacing to the windows. You have no training, no experience. Do you have any idea how dangerous? I have 3 years of watching and learning, I interrupted. I know who reports to whom. I know the hierarchy. I know which of your men are loyal and which ones are just scared. I know the dynamics of your organization better than you think. He turned back to face me, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw genuine surprise in his expression. You've been paying attention. Someone had to. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. You certainly haven't been paying attention to me. Silence stretched between us, weighted with 3 years of mutual resentment and regret. Finally, Sebastian returned to his chair, steepling his fingers beneath his chin, in that gesture I'd seen him use when making difficult decisions. What exactly are you proposing? I help you identify the traitors. All of them. I do whatever you need to root out the betrayal in your organization. I paused, gathering my courage. And in exchange, when it's done, you sign my divorce papers. No arguments, no delays. You let me go. And if you fail, if you can't identify them, then I stay, I said simply. I remain your wife and fulfill whatever role you need me to play. But if I succeed, when I succeed, you give me my freedom. He studied me for so long I began to think he'd refuse. Then slowly he nodded. 1 month, he said. You have 1 month to prove yourself useful. But Stella? His amber eyes locked onto mine with predatory intensity. If you betray me, if you take this information to the Castellanos or anyone else, there's nowhere on earth you can hide. Do you understand? I understand. And during this month, you'll be with me constantly. No more separate wings. No more avoiding each other at public events. To anyone watching, we're a devoted couple. Can you play that role convincingly? My mouth went dry. Being near Sebastian, pretending affection for a man who'd shown me nothing but contempt, it would be torture, but it was also my only chance at freedom. I can play any role you need, I said. He stood, extending his hand across the desk. Then we have a deal. I took his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against mine for the first time in months. His grip was firm, possessive, and something electric sparked between us. Surprise, maybe, or just the shock of physical contact after so much distance. 1 month, I repeated. 1 month, he agreed. Starting now. The charity gala was being held at the Metropolitan Hotel's Grand Ballroom, the kind of event where the city's elite came to see and be seen, while pretending to care about whichever cause was trendy that season. Sebastian had informed me that morning that we'd be attending together, our first public appearance as a united couple in over a year. I'd spent 3 hours being transformed by Sebastian's personal stylist, a woman named Francesca, who'd appeared at the penthouse with what looked like an entire boutique in tow. The dress she'd selected was a deep burgundy silk that clung to my curves before flowing to the floor, the back dipping low enough to be alluring without being scandalous. My blonde hair had been styled in loose waves that cascaded over one shoulder, and the diamond necklace Sebastian had sent to my room, a family heirloom, according to the note, sparkled at my throat. I barely recognized myself in the mirror. For 3 years, I'd dressed to be appropriate, professional, forgettable. This version of me looked like she belonged on Sebastian's arm. "Ready?" he asked from the doorway, and I turned to find him watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. He wore a black tuxedo that fit him like it had been painted on, the crisp white shirt open at the collar in that deliberately casual way that somehow looked more elegant than formal. His dark hair was styled back from his face, emphasizing the sharp angles of his cheekbones and that scar that bisected his eyebrow. He looked like danger wrapped in expensive fabric, and I hated that my traitorous body reacted to the sight of him. "As I'll ever be," I replied, grabbing the small clutch that matched my dress. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, and I froze as his hand settled on my bare shoulders. His touch was warm, firm, possessive in a way that sent shivers down my spine. "Remember," he murmured, his breath ghosting against my ear, "we're in love. Devoted. Inseparable. Can you do that?" "Can you?" I challenged, tilting my head to look up at him. Something flashed in his amber eyes. Irritation, perhaps, or grudging respect. "I'm a better actor than you think." His hand slid down my arms, and he caught my left hand, frowning at my bare ring finger. "Where's your wedding ring?" "I stopped wearing it 6 months ago," I said. "You never noticed." His jaw tightened. "Well, I'm noticing now." He pulled a velvet box from his jacket pocket, opening it to reveal a stunning band of diamonds that matched the necklace. "This was my grandmother's. You'll wear it tonight." "Sebastian, this isn't negotiable, Stella." He slid the ring onto my finger with surprising gentleness. "We're selling a fantasy. The fantasy requires proper props." The ring fit perfectly, of course. Everything in Sebastian's world fit perfectly because he controlled every detail with the same ruthless efficiency he applied to his business dealings. The drive to the hotel was tense. We sat in the back of the Bentley, Marco driving and another security guard. Luca, I thought his name was, in the passenger seat. Sebastian kept his hand on my thigh, just above my knee, his thumb drawing absent circles on my skin through the silk of my dress. The touch should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like a brand. "The Castellanos will be there tonight," he said quietly, his voice pitched low so the guards wouldn't hear. "Vincent Castellano and his wife Isabella. They're going to want to gauge how much we know." "About Donovan?" "About everything." His hand tightened fractionally on my leg. "Vincent is smart, patient. He's been planning this takeover for years. Donovan is just one piece of a larger puzzle." "And what do you want me to do?" "Watch. Listen. Isabella likes to gossip with the other wives. She might let something slip if she thinks you're just another vapid society woman playing dress-up." "I've been just another vapid society woman for 3 years," I pointed out. "That's the role you wanted me to play." "I know." His voice held something that might have been regret if he were capable of such a thing. "That was a mistake." I looked at him sharply, but his face was turned toward the window, his reflection ghostly in the rain-streaked glass. Before I could question him further, we were pulling up to the hotel's entrance where a small crowd of photographers and society reporters waited. "Showtime," Sebastian murmured. He exited first, then turned to offer me his hand, helping me from the car with the kind of attentiveness that made the cameras flash furiously. His arm slid around my waist, pulling me close against his side as we walked the red carpet. I smiled at the photographers, remembering 3 years of lessons in how to look graceful under scrutiny. But this felt different. Sebastian's hand at my waist was possessive, protective in a way it had never been before. He looked down at me with what anyone watching would interpret as devotion, and I found myself responding to the fiction, leaning into him, placing my hand on his chest as though I did this every day. "You're a natural," he whispered as we paused for more photos. "So are you," I replied. I almost believe you actually want me here. His hand tightened on my waist. Maybe I do. Inside, the ballroom was transformed into something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across white-draped tables, and an orchestra played softly in one corner. The guest list read like a who's who of the city's power players, politicians, business moguls, and sprinkled throughout, the families that really ran things from the shadows. Mr. Cross, a portly man in an ill-fitting tuxedo, approached, his wife trailing behind. And the lovely Mrs. Cross. You both look wonderful tonight. I recognized him vaguely. Some city councilman whose name I couldn't remember. Sebastian handled the small talk effortlessly, and I played my part, smiling and nodding at appropriate moments. But my attention was elsewhere, scanning the crowd for the people who mattered. I found them near the bar. Vincent Castellano was tall and silver-haired, with the kind of distinguished appearance that made people trust him instinctively. His wife Isabella stood beside him, dripping in diamonds and designer labels, holding court with 3 other women I recognized as wives of prominent family men. I see them, I murmured to Sebastian when we finally escaped the councilman. Be careful, he warned. Isabella is sharper than she looks. So am I reminded him. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Prove it. I made my way to the bar, timing it so I arrived just as Isabella was ordering another glass of champagne. She glanced at me, and I saw the calculation in her eyes as she took in my dress, my jewelry, my carefully cultivated appearance. Stella Cross, she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. I haven't seen you at one of these events in ages. Where has Sebastian been hiding you? He hasn't been hiding me, I replied, accepting a glass of champagne from the bartender. I've been here the whole time. People just don't tend to notice the wives. She laughed at that, a brittle sound. Isn't that the truth? We're meant to be decorative and silent. She leaned closer, her voice dropping conspiratorially. Though I've heard your particular marriage is more business arrangement than love match. I took a sip of champagne to hide my reaction. So the rumors had spread. Good. That made my role easier. Arranged marriages are common in our world, I said carefully. That doesn't mean they can't evolve into something more. Oh? Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. So the cold cross has finally thawed? How unexpected. Before I could respond, I felt Sebastian's presence behind me, his hand settling on my lower back with casual intimacy. Isabella, he said smoothly. Still spreading gossip, I see. Just making conversation with your lovely wife, she replied. Though I am curious, Sebastian. You two have been married for 3 years, and yet this is the first time I've seen you look at her like you actually care she exists. Perhaps I've been remiss in showing my wife proper appreciation, Sebastian said, his voice carrying that dangerous edge that made smart people back down. I'm correcting that mistake. How romantic, Isabella purred. Vincent, darling, come meet the happy couple. Vincent Castellano materialized from the crowd, his smile pleasant and utterly false. Sebastian, still maintaining your territory, I see. Still trying to poach it, Sebastian countered, his hand tightening fractionally on my back. Just keeping my options open. Vincent's eyes slid to me, assessing. Mrs. Cross, you're looking well. Marriage clearly agrees with you. Some days more than others, I replied, earning a genuine smile from Vincent and a warning squeeze from Sebastian. We should have dinner sometime, Vincent suggested. The 4 of us. It's been too long since we socialized properly. I'll have my assistant coordinate with yours, Sebastian said, in a tone that suggested he'd rather eat glass. As the Castellanos drifted away, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. That was dangerous, Sebastian murmured. Vincent doesn't make social invitations. He was fishing. For what? to see if our united front is real or just theater. His hand slid up my spine, his fingers tracing the bare skin of my back. We need to be more convincing. More convincing than what? I asked, acutely aware of his touch, the heat of his body so close to mine. Instead of answering, he turned me to face him, his hands settling on my waist. The orchestra had begun playing a waltz, and couples were flowing onto the dance floor. "Dance with me," he said. Not a question. Never a question with Sebastian. He led me onto the floor with practiced ease, one hand at my waist, the other holding mine with surprising gentleness. We moved together in perfect synchronization, 3 years of obligatory social events having taught us at least how to dance. "You're tense," he observed. "You're touching me more tonight than you have in our entire marriage," I replied. "It's disorienting." His amber eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I saw something raw there, quickly masked. If we're going to convince people we're truly married, we need to look comfortable with each other. Right now, you're holding yourself like I'm a stranger. "You are a stranger," I said quietly. "We've lived in the same house for 3 years, but I don't know you at all, Sebastian. Then learn me." His voice dropped lower. "We have a month. Use it wisely." The song ended, but he didn't release me. Instead, his hand cupped my face with unexpected tenderness, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. "What are you doing?" I breathed. "Selling the fantasy," he murmured. Then he kissed me. It wasn't a real kiss, just a brush of lips, the kind of public display expected of married couples. But it hit me like lightning, every nerve ending igniting with sensation I'd thought I'd trained myself not to feel for this man. His lips were warm, firm, tasting faintly of the scotch he'd been drinking. And when he pulled back, his eyes were darker, more intense. "Convincing enough?" I asked, hating the breathlessness in my voice. "It's a start," he said. But he didn't let me go, keeping me close as we swayed to the next song, performing our roles for an audience that watched everything. I don't know when the performance started feeling less like acting and more like something real. Maybe it was the way his hand moved on my back, proprietary but gentle. Maybe it was the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, something hungry and confused flickering in those amber eyes. Or maybe it was just my own lonely heart, desperate to believe that the man who'd ignored me for 3 years might actually be capable of seeing me now. Either way, by the time we left the gala, something had shifted between us. Something dangerous and inevitable that I was afraid to examine too closely. The war had begun, and I was caught in the crossfire between the man I'd married and the man he might become. I woke to find Sebastian standing at the foot of my bed, our bed now, since I'd moved into the master suite as part of our performance. He was already dressed in dark jeans and a black sweater that clung to his lean frame, his hair slightly damp from a shower. "Get dressed," he said without preamble. "We're going out." I sat up, pulling the silk sheet higher. "Where?" "One of my warehouses. There's something you need to see." His eyes raked over me in the early morning light, and I was suddenly aware of the thin camisole I wore, how little it concealed. 5 minutes, Stella." He left, and I hurried to dress in jeans and a sweater, pulling my hair into a ponytail. When I emerged, he was waiting by the elevator, Marco and Luca flanking him like always. The drive took us to the industrial district, rows of warehouses separated by chain-link fences and graffiti-covered walls. We pulled into one at the end of a dead-end street, and I noticed immediately that the windows were blacked out, the perimeter secured by at least 6 guards I could see. "Stay close to me," Sebastian instructed as we exited the vehicle. "And don't say anything unless I tell you to." Inside, the warehouse had been converted into something that looked like a legitimate distribution center. Pallets of goods, forklifts, workers moving with purposeful efficiency. But Sebastian led me past all of that to a back office where 3 men waited. One was Michael Donovan, the traitor I'd heard about. He sat in a metal chair, his hands zip-tied behind him, blood trickling from a split lip. The other 2 men I recognized as Sebastian's enforcers, Carlo and Enzo, both wearing expressions of barely controlled violence. "Mrs. Cross," Donovan said when he saw me, his voice hoarse. "How delightful. Has Sebastian started bringing his wife to business meetings?" "Shut up," Sebastian said calmly. He moved to lean against the desk, pulling me with him so I stood in front of him, his hands resting possessively on my shoulders. "Tell her what you told me." Donovan's laugh was bitter. "Why? She's just arm candy. What does she know about—" Sebastian's hands tightened on my shoulders. "Tell. Her. Fine." Donovan spat blood onto the concrete floor. "I've been selling information to the Castellanos for 8 months. Meeting locations, shipment schedules, financial records. Everything they needed to gradually undermine the Cross operations." "Why?" I asked, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. "Why?" Donovan laughed again. "Because Sebastian is weak. He's so obsessed with legitimizing the business, going clean, that he's forgotten what we are. We're not businessmen, we're soldiers. And the Castellanos understand that." "Who else?" Sebastian asked, his voice deadly calm. "You're not smart enough to pull this off alone, Michael. Who's your partner?" "Go to hell." One of the enforcers, Carlo, I think, moved forward, but Sebastian held up a hand, stopping him. Instead, he gently turned me to face him, his hands framing my face with surprising tenderness. "What do you think, wife?" he asked, his amber eyes intense on mine. Should I have Carlo continue his interrogation? I understood what he was doing, using me as a prop, a psychological weapon, making Donovan believe I had influence over Sebastian's decisions, that I was complicit in whatever violence would follow. It should have horrified me. Instead, I felt something cold and calculating click into place. "I think," I said slowly, keeping my eyes on Sebastian's face, "that Donovan is stalling. He's waiting for his partner to extract him or eliminate him. Either way, he's already dead and knows it. So the question isn't whether to hurt him more. That's pointless. The question is who benefits most from Donovan staying silent." Sebastian's eyes widened fractionally. Surprise, maybe even approval. "Go on. His partner has to be someone with access to this location," I continued, my mind racing. "Someone who knows about this interrogation, someone who could coordinate a rescue or assassination." I turned to look at the 2 enforcers. "When was Donovan brought here?" 3 hours ago, Enzo replied, glancing at Sebastian for permission to answer. "And who knew about it?" "Just the family," Carlo said. "Boss, Marco, Luca, me, and Enzo. Standard protocol for traitor interrogation. So," I said softly, pieces clicking together. "The second traitor is either in this room right now, or they're one of the 4 guards outside. Or they're Marco or Luca." Silence fell over the room. Donovan's eyes narrowed, evaluating me with new respect. Or new contempt, it was hard to tell. Sebastian's hands remained on my shoulders, his touch somehow steadying. "Well reasoned," he murmured. "But it doesn't narrow down our suspects enough." "Then we set a trap," I suggested. "Feed different information to each suspect. See which version reaches the Castellanos." "That takes time," Donovan interjected, his voice mocking. "And Sebastian doesn't have time. He's bleeding business to Vincent, losing ground daily. In another month, the Cross family won't even—" Carlo's fist connected with Donovan's jaw, cutting off his words. This time, Sebastian didn't stop him. "Take him to the cells," Sebastian ordered. "Make him comfortable. We're not done with him yet." As they dragged Donovan away, I realized my hands were shaking. The reality of what I'd just witnessed, what I'd participated in, crashed over me in waves. Sebastian turned me to face him, his expression unreadable. "You did well," he said quietly. "I helped you torture a man," I replied, my voice hollow. "You helped me gather intelligence." His thumb brushed my cheekbone, a gesture that was becoming familiar. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "In this world?" "Yes." He released me, moving to the desk where a laptop sat open. "Come here. I want to show you something." The screen displayed what looked like financial records, columns of numbers, transaction histories, account transfers. Sebastian pulled up a series of documents, highlighting specific entries. "This is what Donovan gave the Castellanos," he explained. "Detailed records of every operation we run. With this information, they've been able to undercut our prices, steal our clients, anticipate our moves." "How much have you lost?" $15 million in the last 6 months. His jaw tightened. "And more importantly, reputation. In our world, appearing weak is almost as bad as actually being weak." I studied the records, my mind processing the patterns. "These transfers," I said, pointing to a series of transactions. "They're routed through 3 different shell corporations before reaching the Castellanos. Whoever set this up is sophisticated." "You know about shell corporations?" "I have a degree in finance," I reminded him. "I wasn't always just a trophy wife, Sebastian. Before my father's gambling destroyed everything, I had a career." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "I didn't know that." "You never asked." The bitterness leaked through despite my attempt to stay neutral. "In 3 years, you never once asked what I did before we married, what I wanted, what I was capable of." "You're right," he said quietly. "I didn't. That was a mistake." The admission shocked me more than anything else that morning. Sebastian Cross didn't admit mistakes. He didn't apologize or acknowledge weakness. Yet here he was, standing in a warehouse where he'd just interrogated a traitor, telling me he'd been wrong. "Why now?" I asked. "Why are you suddenly interested in who I am?" "Because I need you," he said simply. "Because you're right. You've been invisible in my world, and that invisibility makes you valuable. But also because—" He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Because watching you reason through Donovan's accomplice, seeing you analyze those financial records, I'm realizing I married someone I underestimated. Badly. Flattery won't make me forget what you've put me through for 3 years. I'm not trying to flatter you." His amber eyes held mine. "I'm trying to apologize. Poorly, apparently." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "We need to go. Now." He grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the door. "Marco, Luca, defensive positions. We might have a tail." The drive back was tense, Sebastian constantly checking his phone and the mirrors. When we finally reached the penthouse, he didn't release my hand, pulling me directly to his office and locking the door behind us. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Vincent called. He wants to move up our dinner plans. Tonight, at his restaurant." "That's sudden." "Exactly." He paced to the windows, his reflection harsh in the afternoon light. "He's testing us. Either he knows about Donovan and wants to gauge our reaction, or he's planning something else entirely. So we go. We play the happy couple. We watch. We listen. It's dangerous, Stella. Vincent doesn't make social invitations. This is a trap of some kind." "Then we spring it," I said with more confidence than I felt. "We knew this wouldn't be simple. If Vincent wants to test us, let him. We'll pass." He turned to look at me, his expression intense. "You understand what you're volunteering for? If Vincent suspects you're helping me investigate, if he thinks you're more than just my decorative wife, you become a target." "I'm already a target," I pointed out. I married you. That made me a target 3 years ago. At least now I'm an active participant instead of a passive victim. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or the beginning of something deeper. He crossed to me in 3 long strides, his hands cupping my face with that same unexpected gentleness. I won't let him hurt you, he said fiercely. Whatever happens tonight, whatever Vincent tries, I will protect you. Do you understand? Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. You don't even like me, Sebastian. Why would you risk yourself to protect me? Because you're mine, he said simply. You've been mine for 3 years, even if I was too blind and stupid to see it. And I protect what's mine. Always. Then he kissed me, and this time it wasn't for an audience. This was raw and desperate and hungry. 3 years of distance collapsing into sudden, overwhelming need. His hands tangled in my hair, and I found myself responding, my body betraying every logical reason I had to hate this man. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. This complicates things, I whispered. Everything about you complicates things, he replied, but maybe that's not a bad thing. That night, I dressed for war. The black dress Isabella had picked out was armor disguised as elegance. Sleek, sophisticated, with a neckline that hinted without revealing. I paired it with the diamond jewelry Sebastian had given me, each piece a declaration of ownership and protection in equal measure. Sebastian met me in the foyer, looking devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit. His eyes raked over me, approval and something hotter flickering in their depths. Perfect, he murmured, offering his arm. Ready? No, I admitted. But let's go anyway. Vincent's restaurant was in the heart of Little Italy, a place called Castellanos, that served as both a legitimate business and a front for less legal activities. We were shown to a private room in the back, where Vincent and Isabella waited with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Sebastian, Stella, Vincent said, rising to greet us. So glad you could make it on such short notice. Our schedule is always flexible for old friends, Sebastian replied smoothly, pulling out my chair with practiced courtesy. The meal that followed was a masterclass in veiled threats and double meanings. Every comment from Vincent carried subtext. Every smile from Isabella held calculation. And through it all, Sebastian kept up his end of the performance, his hand resting possessively on my thigh under the table, his attention seemingly focused on me, rather than the psychological warfare happening around us. So, Isabella said as dessert arrived, how long have you two been? Truly together? Because I have to admit, Sebastian, the transformation is remarkable. You've gone from treating Stella like an inconvenient obligation to looking at her like she's the center of your universe. People change, Sebastian said, his thumb drawing circles on my leg. Sometimes they just need the right motivation. And what motivated you? Vincent asked, his eyes sharp. What changed? Sebastian looked at me then, and for just a moment, I saw something real beneath the performance, something that made my breath catch. I finally opened my eyes, he said quietly, and saw what was right in front of me all along. The words should have been empty. They were part of our act, after all. But something in his voice, in the way his hand tightened on my leg, made me wonder if we were still acting at all. The assassination attempt came 3 days later, sudden and brutal in its efficiency. I was in Sebastian's office, our office now, as I'd begun working through the financial records looking for patterns that might identify the second traitor. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, and I was so focused on the spreadsheets I didn't hear the door open. Mrs. Cross. I looked up to find Luca standing in the doorway, his expression neutral. Nothing about him seemed threatening, which was precisely what made alarm bells sound in my head. Luca was Sebastian's guard, yes, but he never approached me without Marco present. And he certainly never addressed me directly. "Can I help you?" I asked, my hand sliding slowly toward my phone. "Actually," he said, closing the door behind him with a soft click, "I'm here to help you. You see, you've become a problem, Mrs. Cross, a complication that needs to be resolved." The gun appeared in his hand with practiced ease, fitted with a silencer. I was on my feet instantly, the desk between us, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Sebastian will kill you," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the terror coursing through me. "Only if he finds out it was me." Luca smiled, cold and empty. "They'll think it was the Castellanos. Vincent's been making threats. It's the perfect cover." "You're the second traitor." "Very good." He moved around the desk, and I backed toward the windows, my mind racing through options. The panic button Sebastian had installed was by the door, unreachable. My phone was on the desk. Too far. I was trapped. "Donovan talked, didn't he?" Luca continued. "That's why I'm here, to clean up the mess before he gives me up." "He doesn't know it's you," I said, buying time. He never mentioned a name. "But you figured it out." The gun steadied on me. "You're smarter than anyone gave you credit for, Mrs. Cross. That's unfortunate, for you." The office door exploded inward, wood splintering as Sebastian burst through, gun already drawn. The next seconds happened in a blur of violence. Luca turning, Sebastian firing, the window behind me shattering. I threw myself to the floor as bullets tore through the air where I'd been standing. When the gunfire stopped, Luca was down, blood pooling beneath him. Sebastian crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees beside me, his hands frantically checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" His voice was raw, stripped of its usual control. "Stella, talk to me. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," I managed, though my ears were ringing and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Just scared." He pulled me against his chest, his arms crushing me to him with desperate strength. I could feel his heart hammering, could hear his ragged breathing against my hair. "I should have seen it," he said, the words muffled against my neck. I should have known it was Luca. He had access to everything. He was always there. How did I miss it? "Sebastian, if I'd lost you..." He pulled back, his hands framing my face, his amber eyes blazing with emotion I'd never seen from him. "If he'd killed you, Stella, I would have burned this entire city to the ground." Before I could respond, Marco burst in with 4 other guards, weapons drawn. They took in the scene. Luca's body, the shattered window, Sebastian holding me like I was the only solid thing in his world. "Boss," Marco's voice was carefully neutral. "Luca was the second traitor," Sebastian said, his voice returning to that cold command. "Secure the perimeter. I want every man we have checked. Everyone. If there are more rats, I want them found. Now." As his men moved to obey, Sebastian stood, pulling me up with him. His hands wouldn't let me go, constantly touching, my face, my arms, my shoulders, as if reassuring himself I was still there. "We need to get you somewhere safe," he said. "I am safe. I'm with you." His expression cracked, just for a moment, showing the fear beneath the control. "You almost weren't. You almost..." He cut himself off, jaw clenching. "Pack a bag. We're leaving the city." "What? No, Sebastian, we can't run." "We're not running." His voice was steel. "We're regrouping. There's a property upstate, completely secure. We'll go there. I'll put every available man on finding any remaining traitors. And you." He touched my face again, gentler this time. "You are never leaving my sight again. Understood?" I nodded, still shaken enough to not argue. Within an hour, we were in the Bentley, Marco driving us north while 6 guards followed in 2 additional vehicles. Sebastian kept me pulled close against his side, his arm locked around me, his body tense as a drawn bow. The property turned out to be a sprawling estate in the Catskills, all stone and timber nestled into the mountainside with views that would have been breathtaking if I weren't still processing nearly being murdered. Security was immediately visible. Guards at the gates, cameras on every angle, motion sensors in the woods. "This is one of my safe houses," Sebastian explained as we entered. Only 5 people knew about it, and Luca wasn't one of them. The interior was surprisingly warm. Less cold fortress, more alpine lodge with leather furniture, and a massive stone fireplace. Sebastian led me upstairs to a master suite with windows overlooking the mountains. "You should rest," he said, finally releasing me, though his reluctance was visible. "I need to make some calls, coordinate the search for any remaining threats." "Sebastian." I caught his hand before he could leave. "Thank you for saving me. I almost didn't get there in time." His voice was rough. Marco saw Luca head to my office and thought it was strange if he hadn't alerted me. But he did, and you got there in time. I stepped closer, confused by the emotions warring in my chest. This man had ignored me for 3 years, had made me feel worthless and invisible. Yet he'd just killed to protect me, had held me like I was precious, looked at me like losing me would destroy him. "Why do you care so much? A month ago, you refused to even sign my divorce papers. Now you're acting like you matter to me?" he interrupted. "Because you do. You've been fighting to get away from me, and I've been fighting to keep you bound by obligation. But this week, watching you think and analyze and hold your own in this world, I've seen you, Stella. Really seen you, and I can't unsee it." "What does that mean?" "It means—" He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. "It means I want to renegotiate our arrangement." My heart sank. "The divorce." "Not the divorce." He moved closer, his hands settling on my waist. "Everything else. The distance, the separate lives, the performance of being married without any of the reality. I want to change that." "Into what?" "Into something real." His amber eyes burned into mine. "I want a real marriage, Stella. Not one of convenience or necessity, but actual partnership, actual connection, actual love." The word came out barely a whisper. "I don't know if I'm capable of love," he admitted with devastating honesty. "I've spent my whole life being taught that emotion is weakness. But what I feel when I look at you, when I think about losing you, if that's not love, it's as close as I've ever come." I should have said no. Should have reminded him that 1 week of pretending to be a couple didn't erase 3 years of neglect. Should have protected myself from the man who'd already hurt me so deeply. But my treacherous heart had other ideas. "Sebastian." "Don't answer now," he interrupted. "Think about it. We have time. Once the situation with the Castellanos is resolved, once we're sure there are no more threats, we'll talk. Really talk. And you'll tell me what you want." He touched my face, his thumb brushing my lower lip. "But know this. I'm going to fight for you, Stella. Fight to earn the chance you never should have had to ask for. Because somewhere in this fucked up week, you stopped being an obligation and became the most important thing in my life." Then he kissed me, soft and deep and devastating. And when he finally pulled away and left me alone in that mountain bedroom, I sank onto the bed, my mind reeling. The man I'd married was a stranger, but the man I'd spent this week with, the one who'd held me and saved me and looked at me like I was everything, that man was becoming dangerously familiar, and I wasn't sure if that was the best or worst thing that could happen. Night fell over the mountains, and I found Sebastian in the study downstairs, surrounded by laptops and phones, coordinating his search for remaining traitors. He looked exhausted, the stress of the past days evident in the tension of his shoulders. Come to bed, I said from the doorway. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. I have work to do. You have work to delegate. I crossed to him, taking the phone from his hand despite his protest. Your men can handle tonight's sweep. You need rest. Stella, please. I held his gaze. Just be human for one night. Not the Mafia boss, not the general directing his troops, just Sebastian. Something in my words made him crack. He nodded slowly, letting me lead him upstairs to the master bedroom. We changed in awkward silence. Him in the attached bath, me in the bedroom, both acutely aware this would be the first night we'd actually sleep in the same bed rather than just share a space. When he emerged in sleep pants and a t-shirt, I was already under the covers, my heart racing. He climbed in beside me, careful to leave space between us. We lay there in the darkness, the mountain silence profound after the constant noise of the city. I'm sorry, he said finally. For the past 3 years. For making you feel worthless. For being so focused on keeping emotional distance that I never saw what I was throwing away. Why did you? I asked. Keep that distance? Was I really so unbearable? The opposite. His voice was rough in the darkness. You were everything I'd been taught to avoid. Soft, kind, innocent despite your father's sins. I was afraid that getting close to you would make me weak, that caring about you would give my enemies leverage. So I kept you at arm's length, told myself it was for your protection as much as mine. He shifted, and I felt his hand find mine under the covers. I was wrong. All I did was hurt us both. So what happens now? I whispered. After the month is up? After we catch all the traitors and the threat is gone? That's up to you. His thumb traced circles on my palm. You can take your divorce and your freedom like we agreed. Or, he paused. Or you can stay. Give me a real chance to build something worth keeping. That's a lot to ask, I said. After everything. I know. But Stella? His voice dropped lower. I'm not ready to let you go. Not now. Maybe not ever. So I'm asking, begging if I have to. For the chance to prove I can be the husband you deserve, instead of the one you've been stuck with. I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Instead, I shifted closer, letting him pull me against his chest, his arms wrapping around me with possessive tenderness. His heartbeat was steady under my ear, his warmth seeping into my skin. Just think about it, he murmured against my hair. That's all I ask. As I drifted toward sleep, safe in the arms of the man I'd married but was only now beginning to know, I realized something terrifying. I was falling for Sebastian Cross. Not the cold stranger I'd married, but this version, vulnerable and fierce and desperately trying to fix what he'd broken. And I had no idea if that would save us or destroy us both. We spent 5 days at the mountain estate, 5 days that felt suspended from reality. Sebastian ran his organization from the study, but every night he came to bed, and every night we fell asleep tangled together, the distance between us shrinking incrementally. On the 6th day, Marco arrived with news. We swept everyone, he reported, standing in Sebastian's study while I sat curled in the armchair, now a permanent fixture in these meetings. Donovan and Luca were it. No other traitors in the organization. You're certain? Sebastian asked, his hand absently stroking my ankle where it rested against his leg. As certain as we can be. We've implemented new protocols, changed all security codes, restructured command chains. If there were others, we've eliminated their access points. And the Castellanos? Marco's expression darkened. That's the interesting part. Vincent reached out. He wants to meet. Alone. Absolutely not, I said before Sebastian could respond. It's a trap. Maybe, Sebastian replied. Or maybe he's looking for a way out of this escalation before it becomes a full war. You can't seriously be considering meeting with him, I protested. After everything, Donovan, Luca, the attack, you think Vincent is suddenly interested in peace? I think Vincent is a businessman first and a gang leader second. Sebastian's thumb continued that maddening circle on my ankle. War is expensive and unpredictable. If he can get what he wants through negotiation, he'll try that first. What does he want? Territory, respect, acknowledgement that the Castellanos are players, not just pretenders. Sebastian's jaw tightened. Things I'm willing to discuss if it means ending this without more bloodshed. I'm coming with you, I announced. Stella. I'm coming, I repeated firmly. You said it yourself. Vincent has been testing whether our marriage is real or performance. If you show up alone, it suggests you don't actually value my input. But if we go together, as partners, I met his eyes. It sends a message. Pride flickered across Sebastian's face. You're starting to think like a Mafia wife. I'm starting to think like someone who doesn't want her husband killed. The word hung between us. Husband. Not ex-husband or soon-to-be ex-husband. Just husband. Sebastian's hand tightened on my ankle, his expression intense. All right, he said finally. We go together. But Stella, if anything goes wrong, you get out. Promise me. Only if you promise the same. His smile was crooked. Stubborn woman. You married me, I pointed out. Best decision I ever made, he murmured so quietly I almost didn't hear, even if I was too stupid to realize it at the time. The meeting with Vincent was set for the following evening at a neutral location, an upscale restaurant neither family controlled. We dressed carefully. Sebastian in his armor of tailored suits, me in emerald silk that matched my engagement ring. The ring I'd stopped noticing as a brand and started seeing as a promise. The restaurant was elegant but discreet, the kind of place where powerful people made deals away from prying eyes. Vincent and Isabella sat at a corner table, and I noticed immediately that Isabella looked uncomfortable, her usual confidence replaced with wariness. Sebastian. Stella. Vincent rose as we approached, his silver hair impeccable, his smile practiced. Thank you for coming. Your invitation was intriguing, Sebastian replied, his hand at the small of my back as we sat. Though I'm curious what prompted this sudden interest in diplomacy. Let's not pretend this is sudden. Vincent poured wine with steady hands. We've been circling each other for years. My father and your grandfather had their understanding. Perhaps it's time we developed our own. Your understanding didn't include stealing my men and feeding them to betray me, Sebastian said mildly, but his eyes were hard. No, Vincent agreed. That was ill-advised. Donovan approached us with information. We took advantage of the opportunity. But recent events have made clear that your organization is more resilient than we anticipated. Thanks to my wife, Sebastian said, surprising everyone at the table. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. Stella identified both traitors. Without her insight, we might still be bleeding information to you. Vincent's gaze shifted to me, reassessing. Impressive, Mrs. Cross. You're clearly more than decorative. My husband has many talents, I replied smoothly, recognizing my value as one he's developed recently. Isabella laughed at that, genuine amusement breaking through her wariness. I like her, Vincent. She has spine. Which brings us to why we're here, Vincent said. I propose a division of territories. The docks remain Cross. The casino operations become Castellano. We each stay out of the other's primary businesses. No more undermining, no more warfare. Just business. Sebastian was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on my hand. I could practically see him calculating angles, weighing options, assessing threats. And in exchange? He asked finally. In exchange, the Castellanos acknowledge Cross as first among equals in the city. Public respect. No more challenges to your authority. It was a good offer, better than I'd expected. But something about the ease of Vincent's concession made my instincts scream warning. "There's a catch," I said, drawing 3 pairs of eyes to me. Vincent's smile widened. "Perceptive. Yes, there's a condition. My nephew Anthony has been courting your cousin Gabriella for 6 months. I want your blessing for their marriage. A union that ties our families together properly, not through betrayal, but through blood." Understanding crashed over me. This wasn't about territory at all. It was about legitimacy. Vincent wanted the Cross name tied to his family, wanted the respectability and power that came with such a connection. "No," Sebastian said flatly. "Sebastian," Vincent began. "No," he repeated. "I won't trade my cousin like a poker chip, even for peace. Gabriella makes her own choices about who she marries." "Noble," Vincent said, his voice cooling, "but impractical. This is how our world works. Strategic marriages, family alliances." "Is that what you think my marriage is?" Sebastian interrupted. His hand tightened on mine. "A strategic necessity?" "Isn't it?" Vincent challenged. "You married Stella to satisfy your grandfather's demands. Now you're suddenly in love? Forgive me if I'm skeptical." "Believe what you want," Sebastian said, his voice dangerous now. "But understand this. I don't trade people. Not my wife, not my cousin, not anyone under my protection. If Gabriella wants to marry Anthony, I'll give my blessing. But I won't force her hand for a business deal. Then we have nothing to discuss." Vincent stood, his expression hardening. "I offered you peace, Sebastian, a fair division of power. You're rejecting it out of misplaced sentiment." "I'm rejecting it because some things aren't for sale." Sebastian stood as well, pulling me up with him. "You want respect. Earn it through your own merit, not by marrying into my family name." "Careful, Cross," Vincent warned. "Pride comes before the fall." "Then I'll fall with mine intact," Sebastian replied. "But I won't betray the people who trust me. Not for peace, not for profit, not for anything." As we left the restaurant, my heart pounded with a mixture of fear and something that felt dangerously like hope. Sebastian had just chosen principle over practicality, had risked war to protect his cousin's autonomy. The man who'd treated our marriage as a transaction 3 weeks ago had refused to let anyone else be traded like property. "That was stupid," I said as Marco drove us home. "Probably," Sebastian agreed. He kept my hand in his thumb continuing those maddening circles. "But necessary. If I'd agreed, I'd be no better than your father, selling you to clear his debts." "I'm not your cousin, Sebastian. You did sell me." "No." His voice was fierce. "Your father sold you. I bought you. There's a difference. But you're right. I treated you like property instead of a person. That changes now. Starting with making sure no one in my family suffers what you did. Even if it means war? Even then." He looked at me, his amber eyes intense in the passing streetlights. "Some things are worth fighting for, Stella. You taught me that." "I didn't teach you anything. You taught me that people aren't currency, that loyalty is earned, not bought, that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is value someone beyond their strategic worth." He lifted our joined hands, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. "You taught me how to be better, how to be worthy of you." "Sebastian, I know we haven't finished our month," he interrupted. "I know you haven't decided whether to stay or take the divorce. But Stella, I need you to know something." He turned more fully toward me. "I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I've been falling since you walked into my office with those divorce papers and demanded I see you as more than an obligation. Maybe it started even before that, and I was just too blind and stubborn to recognize it. but I'm done pretending this is just business. Done acting like you're anything less than everything I never knew I needed. Tears pricked my eyes. 3 years of loneliness and longing crashing against 3 weeks of transformation and truth. "What if it's too late?" I whispered. "What if you hurt me too badly for too long? Then I'll spend the rest of my life making it right," he said simply. "Every day, I'll prove that the man you married is dead, and the man I've become is worthy of the chance you gave me. By refusing a business deal that could have brought peace? By refusing to treat anyone the way I treated you." His hand cupped my face. "By choosing people over power. By putting you first. Always. The way I should have from the beginning." I didn't know what to say to that, how to reconcile the cold stranger I'd married with this man who looked at me like I hung the moon. So instead, I kissed him, pouring 3 years of hurt and 3 weeks of hope into the connection. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Give me the rest of the month," he murmured. "Let me prove this is real. Let me show you what we could be if you choose to stay. And if I choose to leave?" Pain flickered across his face, but he answered honestly. "Then I'll sign the papers. I'll set you free. I'll hate every second of it, but I'll do it. Because if you've taught me anything, it's that love means respecting someone's choices, even when they break your heart." That night, we made love for the first time, as something more than obligation or performance. It was raw and desperate and tender all at once. 3 weeks of growing connection finally finding physical expression. And afterward, lying in his arms with his heartbeat steady under my ear, I realized something terrifying and wonderful. I loved him, the man he was becoming, if not entirely the man he'd been. I loved his fierce protection, his gradual softening, his determination to earn what he'd once taken for granted. I loved how he looked at me now, like I was precious and powerful in equal measure. But love wasn't enough to erase 3 years of pain, and I still didn't know if I could trust this transformation, or if it would dissolve the moment our agreement ended. 2 weeks left. 2 weeks to decide if I was brave enough to bet on a man who'd proven he could break me, but was fighting to show he could cherish me instead. 2 weeks to choose between the freedom I'd craved and the love I'd never expected. The final week arrived with both vindication and complication. Sebastian's refusing Vincent's deal had seemed noble in the moment, but the consequences came swiftly. 3 of our smaller operations were hit in coordinated strikes. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to send a message. Vincent wasn't accepting rejection gracefully. "He's testing us," Sebastian said, reviewing damage reports in his study. I sat across from him, no longer a decoration but a partner. My financial analysis spread across the desk. "Seeing if we'll buckle under pressure." "We won't," I said with certainty. "The losses are manageable. And look," I pointed to the pattern I'd identified. "Vincent's hitting operations that were already underperforming. He's not going after our profitable ventures. Because he still wants a deal," Sebastian realized. "He's applying pressure, but not enough to start a real war." "Exactly. So we weather the storm, show strength, and wait for him to come back with a better offer." Sebastian looked at me with something like wonder. 3 weeks ago, you were asking for a divorce. Now you're strategizing gang warfare with me. 3 weeks ago, you treated me like furniture." I met his eyes. "People change. Situations evolve. I'm adapting." "Is that all you're doing? Adapting?" He stood, moving around the desk to where I sat. His hands settled on the arms of my chair, caging me in. Or is something else happening here? My breath caught at his proximity, the heat of his body, the intensity in his amber eyes. "What do you want me to say, Sebastian?" "The truth." His hand came up to cup my face. Our month is almost up. You've helped me root out the traitors, strengthen my organization, navigate Vincent's challenge. You've fulfilled your end of our agreement. So tell me, Stella, do you still want that divorce? My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward since I'd walked into his office with those papers a month ago. I'd wanted freedom then, an escape from a marriage that was slowly killing me. But now, I don't know, I admitted. You've changed, Sebastian. Or maybe you've just shown me parts of yourself you kept hidden. Either way, you're not the man I married 3 years ago. Is that good or bad? Both. Neither. I struggled for words. I'm falling for you. For this version of you that values me and protects me and looks at me like I matter. But I'm terrified, Sebastian. Terrified that the moment I choose to stay, the moment I commit to this marriage for real instead of obligation, you'll go back to being the man who ignored me for 3 years. I won't. His voice was fierce. I swear to you, Stella, that man is dead. I killed him the moment I almost lost you to Luca's bullet. The moment I realized that all the distance I'd maintained hadn't protected either of us. It had just made us both miserable. Promises are easy, I whispered. Especially when you're trying to avoid losing something. You're right. He pulled back, giving me space I suddenly didn't want. Words aren't enough, so let me show you instead. He crossed to his desk, pulled out a drawer, and retrieved a sheaf of papers I recognized instantly. My divorce papers. The ones I'd brought him a month ago. The ones he'd refused to sign. He set them in front of me, produced a pen, and in swift, bold strokes, signed his name on every required line. I stared at the signatures, my world tilting. What are you doing? Giving you a choice. His voice was steady despite the tension in his shoulders. Those papers are signed. Legal. If you file them tomorrow, our marriage is over. You'll get everything we agreed to. Financial support, protection, your freedom. Everything you asked for. I don't understand. I'm giving you the divorce, Stella. He crouched before my chair, taking my hands in his. Not because I want to. God knows I don't want to. But because you need to know you have the power here. That staying isn't about obligation or fear or even our agreement. If you stay now, it's a choice. Your choice. Made freely. Without coercion or deals or anything except what you actually want. Tears spilled down my cheeks, 3 years of emotional armor cracking wide open. What if I want the divorce? Pain flashed across his face, but he didn't look away. Then I'll respect that. I'll hate it. I'll probably spend the rest of my life regretting how badly I failed you. But I'll respect your choice. And if I want to stay, then we tear up these papers together, he said, his thumb brushing away my tears. And we build something real. Not a marriage of convenience or strategy, but an actual partnership. A real relationship where you're valued and cherished and treated like the queen you are. That's a pretty fantasy, I whispered. It's a promise. His amber eyes held mine. I can't undo 3 years of mistakes, Stella, but I can spend the next 30 years making sure you never doubt your worth again. I can love you the way you deserve to be loved from the beginning. I can be the husband you needed instead of the one you got. I don't need perfect, I said, fresh tears falling. I just need real. I need to know that this, I gestured between us, isn't just because you needed me to solve a problem, that it won't evaporate once the crisis is over. It won't. He kissed my knuckles, then my palms, his lips warm against my skin. The crisis is what made me see you clearly, but what I feel now has nothing to do with business or strategy. I love you, Stella. Not because you're useful or because you helped me catch traitors, but because you're brilliant and brave and beautiful. Because you challenged me. Because you made me want to be better. Because somewhere in this fucked up month, you became the center of my entire world. I looked at the signed divorce papers, then at the man kneeling before me, offering me both freedom and forever with equal honesty. The choice was mine, truly, completely mine. I picked up the papers slowly. Sebastian's face went carefully blank, preparing himself for rejection. But instead of walking away, I tore them in half, then in quarters, then kept tearing until they were nothing but confetti scattered across his desk. "I choose you," I said, my voice strong despite the tears. "Not the man you were, but the man you're becoming. I choose us. This terrifying, complicated, beautiful thing we're building." The relief and joy that crashed across his face was breathtaking. He surged up, crushing his mouth to mine in a kiss that tasted like promise and possession and pure, overwhelming love. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "You won't regret this," he swore. "I'll spend every day proving you made the right choice." "You better," I replied. "Because, Sebastian, I'm not the meek girl you married anymore. I'm someone who knows her worth. And if you ever go back to treating me like I don't matter, I'll have to answer to the woman who outsmarted 2 traitors and negotiated with Vincent Castellano," he finished, pride evident in his voice. Believe me, that's motivation enough to stay on my best behavior. That night, we celebrated our choice with something that felt like a real wedding night. All the tenderness and passion and promise that should have existed 3 years ago. And afterward, tangled in sheets with the city lights painting patterns across our skin, Sebastian made new vows to replace the empty ones we'd once spoken. "I promise to see you," he murmured against my hair. "Really see you. To value your mind as much as your beauty. To include you in decisions that affect us both. To never make you feel small or unimportant or invisible." "I promise to trust you," I replied. "To give you room to keep growing. To build this marriage together instead of waiting for you to fix everything. To be your partner in every sense of the word. I promise to love you louder," he continued. "To show you every day that you're my choice, my priority, my everything. I promise to hold you accountable," I said. "To call you on your bullshit. To never let us slip back into silence and distance. Deal." He kissed me, soft and sweet and full of tomorrow. "Now and forever, Stella Cross, you and me." "You and me," I echoed. And for the first time in 3 years, I believed it. The next morning, I woke to find Sebastian already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed and watching me with an expression of such tenderness it made my chest tight. "What?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Just memorizing this," he replied. "You, in our bed, actually choosing to be here. I want to remember this moment for the rest of my life." "Sap," I teased, pulling him down for a kiss. "You're sap," he corrected. Then his expression shifted to something more serious. "There's something I need to show you. Get dressed." 20 minutes later, we were in his office. Our office now, I corrected myself. Sebastian unlocked a drawer I'd never seen him open before and pulled out a thick file. "I had this prepared 2 weeks ago," he said, setting it before me. "Before our month was up. Before you made your choice." I opened it to find legal documents, complex ones that I needed several minutes to parse. But gradually, understanding dawned. "This is..." I couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't believe what I was reading. 50% ownership of everything I have," Sebastian confirmed. "The businesses, the properties, the investments, all of it. Signed over to you, irrevocably. Legally filed a week ago." "Why would you do this?" "Because you needed to know you weren't powerless." His hand covered mine on the papers. 3 years ago, you came to me desperate and in debt, with no options. Your father had made you a commodity to be traded. I don't ever want you to feel that trapped again. So you gave me half your empire? So I gave you agency, he corrected. With this, you're not dependent on me financially. You can walk away at any time and be independently wealthy. You can stand on your own. You can make choices based on what you want, not what you need to survive. Tears blurred my vision. You're insane. This makes me your equal in every business decision. I could ruin you. You could, he agreed calmly. But you won't. Because you're not your father, Stella. You're not a gambler or a liar or someone who hurts people for profit. You're good and honest, and exactly the partner I need to keep me from becoming too much like my grandfather. I don't know what to say. Say you'll use this power wisely. He pulled me into his arms. Say you'll keep me honest. Say you'll be my conscience when I'm tempted to take the easy, brutal path. Say you'll remind me that some things, like people's autonomy and dignity, are never for sale. I can do that, I whispered against his chest. But Sebastian, this is too much. I can't possibly. You can. And you will. He tilted my face up to his. Because you're not just my wife anymore, Stella. You're my equal, my partner. And partners share the burden and the benefit of building something together. Over the following weeks, our relationship transformed in ways I'd never imagined possible. Sebastian included me in every business meeting, valued my input, implemented my suggestions. We restructured the organization together, creating new protocols that made it harder for traders to gain footholds. We negotiated with Vincent again, this time together as a united front, and reached a deal that respected both families' territories and autonomy. I met with Gabriella, Sebastian's cousin, and found her actually in love with Anthony Castellano. Her marriage to him, when it happened 6 months later, was her choice. Approved, but not forced by Sebastian. The wedding united our families not through coercion, but through genuine affection. And through it all, Sebastian kept his promises. He saw me. He valued me. He loved me loudly and publicly, and without reservation. The man who'd flinched from my touch 3 years ago now reached for my hand constantly, as if he needed the contact to breathe. Our first real anniversary, 1 year after I'd torn up those divorce papers, Sebastian took me back to the mountain estate where we'd first shifted from performance to reality. I have something for you, he said, as we stood on the deck overlooking the mountains. More legal documents signing away your empire? I teased. Better. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and my breath caught. Before you panic, it's not an engagement ring. We're already married, but I needed, to give you something that represented our real beginning. Not the obligatory wedding 3 years ago, but the day you chose me. Inside the box was a ring of emerald and diamond, delicate and beautiful. It was my grandmother's, he explained. She gave it to my grandfather when he'd nearly ruined their marriage through neglect and pride. It was her way of saying she chose him anyway, that she was willing to build something better. I want you to have it. To remember that even when I fail, and I will fail, Stella, because I'm human and imperfect, I'm choosing you. Every day. Forever. I let him slide it onto my right hand, companion to the wedding band on my left. You're still a sap. I'm your sap, he corrected, echoing that morning a year ago. Then he dropped to one knee on the deck, and I started laughing through tears. What are you doing? We're already married. I'm asking properly this time, he replied. Stella Cross, will you marry me? Not as a business arrangement or a strategic alliance, but as two people who love each other. Will you build a life with me? Have children with me? Grow old with me? Will you continue to choose me, every day, for the rest of our lives? Yes, I said, pulling him up to kiss him. Yes to all of it. Now and always and forever. And as the sun set over the mountains where our real marriage had begun, I knew I'd made the right choice. Not the safe choice or the expected choice, but the right one. I'd chosen love over fear, possibility over certainty, and the man who'd proven he could change over the easy path of walking away. Sebastian had despised me for 3 years, but in one transformative month, he'd fallen in love with me. And I'd fallen right back, straight into the future we'd build together. A future based not on obligation, but on choice. Not on convenience, but on love. Not on who we'd been, but on who we were becoming, together.